It's the Wild West right now in terms of AI and experimentation. Every single one of our clients wants to understand how to revolutionize their work, either pre-award or post-award, using AI. They're looking for AI to help them identify opportunities, AI to write a proposal, AI to do risk identification. But the unifying theme is they're looking to help their employees. They're not looking to replace their employees. You can't just have a document and AI and expect AI to magically do everything. There's no force multiplier if you're using bad data.
Welcome to the latest episode of Federal Market Frontlines, brought to you by TechnoMile. I'm your host, Tom Temin. Each month, we explore the timely issues affecting the ever-changing federal market for technology and services. Today, we're talking to someone with more than 20 years' experience in analyzing the defense markets and the trends therein. He was a strategy leader at Bloomberg Government, and now he's Senior Vice President of Product Strategy for TechnoMile. Please welcome Kevin Brancato. Kevin, good to see you.
Tom, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And it's a crazy time we're talking about with the defense appropriations requests and everything going on in the Defense Department. But let's talk about artificial intelligence, something the government is wanting to buy, but it's also affecting contracting and contract management. What do you see happening? What's the reality here, and what's maybe something people don't need to worry about so much?
Yeah, this is going to be an extensive discussion because every single one of our clients wants to understand how to revolutionize their work, either pre-award or post-award, using AI. It's not enough now to say, how can I use a chatbot or how can I integrate something, but they're thinking through the fundamentals of how to take different parts of their business and put it into one whole and have AI put that together, and they don't know how yet. So they're looking to third-party vendors, they're trying experiments themselves. It's the Wild West right now in terms of AI and experimentation. They're looking for AI to help them identify opportunities, AI to write a capture plan, AI to write a proposal, AI to communicate across the organization, AI to do risk identification. But the unifying theme is they're looking to help their employees. They're not looking to replace their employees. In our market, they're really looking to strengthen and enable a whole host of functions across. And I think we should dive into each of those areas.
Yeah, so in the augmentation of federal contractors, business capture, proposal writing staffs, the red teams and so forth, that seems to be where it sounds like the contractors feel they have the most potential to get better.
I would say it's actually across the board. And what we're seeing is, in terms of opportunity identification, we have, and many others have, found the ability to take the huge amount of data that's out there, right? So that's what I've been doing for 20, 25 years, is trying to understand the budgets, understand the opportunity information, the contract data that's out there. And for a very long time, it was manual analysis of the data, putting pieces together where you could get it, put it into spreadsheets and put this information together. When I was at RAND, what we did there was to take basically really large, challenging projects that folks in the government would have and help them think through critical big decisions of very large billion-dollar investments, help them think through what they needed to buy. And then when I went to Bloomberg, it was the flip side. Okay, so now you're trying to sell into these major programs. What contract data, what budget data, what information is out there for a team to be able to say, okay, we're really going to make the investment to try to win this, who should I partner with? Who are the key stakeholders? And my team, for a very long time, wrote analysis, had big data. We used machine learning at that time to sort of identify the size of an opportunity. But we're really trying to help out and craft this pre-award side. And now, with AI, yes, you have all of that before. You have really smart people with big challenges. You have all this big data and stream. But now the idea is we need to be able to accurately predict who's the best person for us to talk to, be able to put together all the artifacts that somebody would want inside of a review. So can I have a proposal that's automatically partially written for me? Can I have an appropriate selection? Who's the best people I should put on this project that I have already inside of my team? And what are my key critical gaps? Who should I go identify as potential partners? And I think a lot of clients see this as a huge opportunity for them because they see this as really increasing sales. And if you can increase sales, the investment becomes immediately worthwhile on this business development and capture side. But we see the same concept on our post-award contract management product. At TechnoMile, we have a lot of companies who have used us to manage their post-award contract lifecycle. And when they started using AI, the idea is, I'm just going to save time. I'm going to save effort. There's a lot of humdrum type activities. And I would say this, a lot of business developers and capture managers, they love selling and they love the act of selling and they love engaging with folks. They don't like using a system. They don't like putting information in the system. AI can help there. But our post-award team, where you have the contracts managers, procurement managers, subcontract managers, they love systems.
And don't overlook compliance either.
That's all that's embedded in there. They love the system. They love having the information in the system, but they want to streamline the entry. And so our force foray at TechnoMile was to streamline their very difficult, time-consuming activities of taking a record that the government's given them and put it into the system, so then they could have more value-added activities pre-award or post-award. So companies kept seeing this opportunity every time AI came in was, can I take somebody and then more effectively use them for the post-award for operations to try to get more money, make sure I've executed my contract, or pre-award to help assess risk ahead of time. We're seeing a lot of this AI usage, whether it's traditionally this growth mindset pre-award or this post-award compliance type mindset, is all driven to try to increase sales and drive a better bottom line.
And you're talking about a lot of different functions that happen perhaps in an overlapping but more or less linear fashion. So for the technology staffs of these companies, then and from TechnoMile's offering standpoint, it requires an orchestration of many different agents and bots and AI applications to make this kind of a continuous process that hands off through the phases of contract award and management, sounds like.
Yeah, so that's basically where the threads in my history converge, right? So you have a lot of this data and this intelligence, but the idea is, how do you put this into a workflow? For a decade, TechnoMile's had these workflow tools to help BD and capture on one side, to help the contracts managers, subcontracts managers on the other side, and these standardized tools. But yes, you want to be able to connect them, but you want to connect them in a very nimble way. And that's where we say AI really happening. Because this workflow tool is where the contractors actually work. We're making sure that the data that's out there, that's either the publicly available data or the data that's being generated inside the system, is not just passive information, right? We want to help contractors win more. And so it has to be embedded in all of their decisions. It's not like the idea is we want to have a singular system where all that information is passed end to end as much as possible. Yes, you can build something using very traditional methods of, okay, I'm going to have every single piece of information that's ever in there and try to connect it. But you really want AI scanning across all of your opportunities or potential opportunities that are there and your contracts, and tie it all together.
And over time, these types of capabilities become your knowledge management locus, because you know what happened in a contract a year ago, 5 years ago, and over time, you don't lose learnings and insights that sometimes do get lost in corporate settings.
It's definitely there, because you have a contract in federal space, it could be 5, 10, 15 years long, and you're not going to have the same contract manager during that time. The capture manager is long gone or moved into some other area. The people who've been doing the supplier management have turned over 2 or 3 times. And you want their lessons learned embedded in the system. And the best way to get that information is not to have it structured in the table, but you have all their notes. You have their emails. You have the previous modifications of records. It's all in there. And then when somebody's years later saying, okay, well, I need to know what happened, they can query the system in a very prompt, natural language manner and actually ask for information across this system and get the information that they really needed out of it very quickly. But they weren't there to have it's not their emails, it's not their notes, it's the entire system where it's all in one place.
All right, good. And let's switch gears for a minute now, as the defense systems that we're serving themselves are becoming more software-defined, data-driven. You have these orchestrated drone systems and all of this. There's a million examples. But the primes and also the newcomers, the high-growth companies coming into this market, have issues around intellectual property and data rights. if they have created the software programs. It's a little bit different from hardware, which is hard to reproduce, whereas software IP is easy to copy and use again and reuse and modify. So what are the issues there?
Yeah, so it's far. How far down the rabbit hole can you go with this? So we even say here it's software defined. Like we can make a big distinction between hardware, where the government understands what it's going to get, and then still insist on a right to repair, where it needs the data for the parts to be able to, and it needs the right to be able to do that. So on the one side, these defense technology firms are doing a very traditional thing. This AI, the software, needs to be put into hardware in many places to actually execute on the mission. And so there's a problem still there. But on the software side, what's the product that's being delivered? How is that even defined? A physical deliverable is one thing, but for software, you've got a software-defined system. What is the rights for use? And then if it's built software today, it's built using AI. And so do you have the underlying algorithms to the software, but do you have access to the prompts that generated the code? There are actually legal issues right now going through courts of who owns what not in the federal world, as far as I know, but in other areas of what it actually is part of work product and how far back that has to go. So you're talking about algorithms, training data, model weights, which models have been used, which interfaces, because software is not built even the way it was 5 years ago, even the way a year ago. Most software is not built the way it was. And so the situation today is rapidly changing. And the DFARS clauses that are out there, that's how a contract system has to be able to track what regime was being used in any given contract, or in that contract, which task order under an IDIQ. Mm-hmm. So a contract system really should understand GovCon natively. And if it doesn't understand GovCon natively in our space, then there's a big problem, because it's not going to understand this IDIQ and these clauses flow down. But this particular contract, this task order, delivery order, or this distinction between those has different rules of engagement and different IP protections. And so we're really seeing that what our clients asking for is fluidity, the ability to be nimble as these regimes change over time. And so, companies that are very advanced, that are providing the AI backbone to the Defense Department, that are engaged in next generation software, they are coming to the Defense Department saying, we'd love to sell you stuff, but you don't get everything from us. You don't get everything all the time. And so there is this balance that needs to be had from a policy standpoint. But those companies need to manage their contracts. Those companies need to know which opportunities to pursue and what they're going to be held to if they can't negotiate those away. And that's what a universal system for contract management, for opportunity management should help them out.
Yeah, and I would say even if you do know the GovCon space, because of the shifts happening and the rules changing in the FAR and the DFAR, then you have to know which version was invoked for a particular contract action.
Yeah.
So you're in compliance.
It's crazy now. So we pulled up, we have all the opportunities in the system, and our clients come tell us and they say, well, just look what's happening now. Open up some of the latest solicitations. Are there the standard clauses anymore? 2/3 are deviations from the standard clauses due to the revolutionary FAR overhaul, and all the agency clauses as well. So our clients really want to know which clauses a contract is adhered to. Now, we provide all those. We provide every clause that's out there, the FAR, the DFARS, but now all of a sudden they start pushing all these deviations everywhere, and it's been trouble for our clients to track that, whether they're in these technology domains or they're just putting butts in seats. They're all subject to it. Mm-hmm. And so, even for it's not a data rights problem, but it's a DEI issue, or there's some other issue where they've been held, or they're going forward that they have a cost plus provision that maybe they were expecting a fixed price contract in, and they need to understand what they're actually subject to. A system that really ensures that they know which version of a clause every contract has. Now, ours does that, right? Ours you put a contract in the system, or even put an opportunity, a solicitation in the system, because by the time to address a lot of those issues for IP is not post-award, it's pre-award. Mm-hmm. It's deciding whether or not you're going to pursue the opportunity, and if you are, which a negotiation position will be, and how you're going to deal with your own suppliers in that area. That has to be handled well before somebody assembles a team to start to bid on an opportunity, and the management system really needs to assist the contractor to do that.
And that leads to the next question, especially talking to the VC-backed, to the new companies into the market. They need to develop what you might call good contract management habits early on. Even though they might have had a meeting or two at the Pentagon and everybody's excited about their product, then the reality hits the road that if you're actually going to make a sale to the government, you've got some real issues, and you've got to make sure that you're lined up to handle those in a continuous fashion.
Yeah, I would say I want to make sure for a defense technology company, somebody who's just starting out, your contract is an operational function. Your contracts team is helping you win more business. That's how you should frame it from the very beginning. A lot of legacy contractors saw that, and as you mentioned earlier, as we agreed on, compliance is a big portion of this work, but everyone can face compliance. And the question is, how can you turn that same information that you use for compliance and turn it into an opportunity? Right? It's not about risk and just holding back the risk or mitigating the risk. The inverse of risk is opportunity. Can you turn that into opportunity, that same level of information? So if you're a federal contractor just winning out, yeah, you want to start out with a rock solid understanding. You want to be able to make sure that any risk provisions are identified, that they're in a system, and that information is pushed inside your organization to the people who really need it. The contract used to be a piece of paper, now it's a PDF. You just don't want to stick it in SharePoint, right? What you want to do is have that be actionable information. The reason you want it in a system, yes, there's risk mitigation, but every obligation that you should have has been written in that contract. Every CLIN, every line item that's in there needs to be fully funded, or you're missing out on revenue. Your contracts team can help out on that, but they can't. This is that area actually where it matters. Like somebody say, well, AI can do everything. You can't just have a document and AI and expect AI to magically do everything. What you really need is a system in place that can get the information, have appropriate system, a workflow on top of it, and then have AI assist the people in engaging with this. Now, AI agents can help you, and I think of AI agents as team members, but you really need to have that system in place for make sure deliverables don't get missed, to make sure compliance requirements are built into it, to make sure your obligations and milestones are all set and ready to go. It's not additional overhead. It's not like having the real contract on paper and having a system. It's about, are you operationalizing that information? It's a real tool for early stage companies. I would make sure this is done not just because, whatever, there's a system out there. Like AI should enable a company like this to adopt it quickly. Like we talk about AI inside of our platform. We're actually thinking about how do you have AI deliver the platform? Clients come to us with a huge array of legacy data, and they're like, how can AI assist us in getting onto your platform now? We don't want to wait. We know most of the time there's these huge enterprise implementations of major ERP software. It could take years to get this done. How do we get that down to a month? How do we get that we can turn it on tomorrow? That's where we really see AI enabling us, is connecting with various platforms, getting in data very quickly. And I would expect, especially a defense startup, to really want to move in that direction. Don't hold themselves back with a system that's just going to be, well, I'm going to have a consultant implement this, and here's what they tell me about that. No, you have an out-of-the-box platform. You understand the schema. You know how it's going to help you. Go execute. And I think taking that same way they want to execute in the government's mission, making sure their internal systems have that same mindset.
And the implication, I think, or the underlying story here is that for contractors, whether they're new to the market, VC-backed, or the long-established ones, should not expect to replace people with this agentic AI that you're describing, as some in the commercial world are doing. Meta famously laid off thousands and thousands of people with the express purpose of replacing them with bots. That sounds like it can't happen in this particular market. It would probably not be acceptable to the government, but you really need that human in the loop, to use the common phrase, to oversee all of this and to enable them to work more efficiently and more smartly, but you really can't replace them.
So, Tom, you're talking to an economist, and right, so it's by training, and economists look
the grim
at the
science.
history of the history of productivity is you're adding machines, you're adding technology, and we have far more jobs than we've ever had in the past, and it tracks well with the growth of the worldwide economies. Jobs change, and they will change, and so that's not a macro story today. For us, it's what's the nature of the work inside the company? What are you trying to achieve? The company may decide, hey, look, we can streamline our contract management or business development. They'll shift resources to get more out of what they need. They're going to invest more in engineering. They're going to invest more in to compete with others. Invest more in R&D. They'll invest more in delivery. Companies see this as an opportunity to invest. They're investing in technology, and if the technology is going to invest in and change the way certain jobs happen, then it's going to change the way certain jobs happen. And so, yeah, they don't plan on getting. I would say there is a job that's going to get rid of. Somebody who's just keying data entry. Mm-hmm. That job, nobody wants that job, right? Nobody who's managing somebody who's just keying data entry. However, somebody whose job responsibility it is to make sure, look, we've got an integrated solution, a suite of systems. The data that's in those systems has to be validated. And yes, we'll have AI validate data as much as possible, but I still want a human being to sign off because there is a human being who's going to be ultimately held responsible for this contract. So I need a human being to sign off. But that's a very different job between somebody whose job it is to look at a piece of paper and enter into the system and somebody who's held responsible for understanding what's in that contract and ensure that it's in the system correctly. Two very different roles, but I don't see companies getting rid of those people. I see them insisting on more strategic views out of them.
And if they can shift more resource to engineering and product development and maybe even manufacturing, if that's the case, then perhaps companies can deliver quicker and more closely related to the requirements, and that takes time and cost out of the system for everybody.
So when we were first selling our first extraction software into the marketplace, our Transform Copilot, right, our AI extraction software, I went and talked to a bunch of customers and they said, well, what do we get out of this? Like, are we going to lose jobs? And I said, I've spoken to every single one of our clients. And the idea is that you're going to save cost because you're going to save time. But what are you going to spend that time on? Now you got these people have got some time on their hands. Okay, some of it's going to be, I got to make sure the AI is doing right, but that's nowhere near as much. Financial compliance, making sure that is, I understand now which I can monitor contracts a lot better and understand which ones have money that I've not gotten. And then legal compliance, are these other two areas, which were really areas for time savings. And where would they spend more time? As I mentioned earlier, they spend more time assisting in opportunity identification and assessment, pre-award, or post-award delivery and operations of existing contracts. None of the clients were saying, you know what, we just don't need all these people. They were saying, we need people to help run our business better. Help us make sure we run our business better.
Sure. And so for contractors that might be coming over to the federal market, or companies, that is, regardless of their size or their backing or their newness, it sounds like this offers, the platform like TechnoMile, a streamlined way of getting to that federal domain expertise that is so important in there. Yes, everybody does accounting, everybody does billing, everybody does sales and so forth, but really, as you mentioned earlier, without the federal domain expertise in there, it doesn't do much good. It sounds like it's a lot easier and faster to get that domain expertise now than it might have been in the past.
Well, I think we'd argue that the domain expertise is table stakes at this point, that you would actually, if you're coming into our market, you would expect a tool that could understand exactly what's going on. So you should not have any issue where, okay, for a commercial contract, I have an AI, and I'm trying to negotiate over the terms of the contract, and it could help me negotiate those. And out of the box, most models now, AI, the really advanced reasoning models, do a reasonably good job of handling a commercial non-disclosure agreement. Like, they understand these things already. Companies spent a huge amount of money trying to get domain-trained knowledge and look at across all the commercial contracts, but the standard, the big LLMs, the model providers, do a good job even if you don't train those models. But I tell you what they don't do a good job in is assessing FARS and DFARS risk, because that's very specific to this area. Like understanding an IDIQ and which clauses should flow down to task orders, which clauses would actually flow down to a supplier on that task order, that's very specific. And so that's not built into any of the models. If you want that to work from an organizational perspective, you have to go to a CLM provider that actually understands that, or an opportunity provider, like for a pre-award assessment, they have to understand that. And if you don't, understand what incrementally funded CLINs are, when you do an analysis, it's going to look like, well, is it $1 million? Is it $500,000? Why is there a difference in these numbers? Well, because that's the way the government works. and the government can incrementally fund, and an AI needs to really understand how that's going to work. Look into the history, understand the pattern of that in the history, and present to the end user, actually, here are the 5 contracts where you could take action this week that would help you grow your business before the end of the fiscal year. Like, that's not something a standard CLM is geared to doing. You really need something specialized. So something that's commercial, built just for commercial. Our clients do both commercial and government work, but we see that the specialization and the difficulty is really in the specialization, and that's where we want. We think this is the right DNA, right? The right DNA is GovCon first for companies that do a substantial portion of their business. It doesn't have to be everything, but a substantial portion of their business. They need to have that, in place.
Right, and I think the theme we need to underscore one more time here that you've said a couple of times over the course of this show is that this is not only about compliance and contract management and business development even, but also about direct revenue if you do it right. And everybody cares most about the top line.
I would agree, because you're doing compliance because you're in business to make money. You're complying with the terms and conditions. And yes, contracts is a very specific, is a high specialty here to ensure compliance with a very strict, unique way that the government does business. That's why you have compliance, because you want to make sure you're serving the customer. And we want to frame things in that way. Another example of something where it really helps to understand is, there's one thing to have a commercial contract dispute. It's something completely different to have your opportunity put under protest. And it's just not the same thing, right? So yes, you have a commercial contract dispute. It is a dispute. It's a dispute with somebody who's most likely lost to you, and you just don't have that in the commercial world. So you really need to have that in the DNA, and that's where a company like TechnoMile comes in. We have the domain expertise, and we built that into the products. It's not a sales pitch, it's who we are. It's why here I'm at TechnoMile. It's why we have other folks here who have decades of experience trying to understand what a deviation is, what protest history, and actually make sure when an AI is brought in that it's trained on the right things. Because we have found that you can point AI at literally everything, and then AI does not know where to focus, right? You can't just point it at, I have 1 million opportunities, I have 10 million documents, go identify things. It doesn't know what to do. It's not designed for that. AI is fundamentally a word engine. You put words on one side or letters on one side and you get stuff that comes out. It's the instructions, the knowledge, the expertise that you have designed into it that generate the really good results.
Right, so, nobody needs a hallucination if there's millions of dollars at stake.
I'll give you a great example for that. This is when we built our first digital assistant, Mila, our chatbot. Mm-hmm. We did something that you don't see in most chatbots, is literally everything that needs to come out of this, we source back to where it came from. Not just every document, the page and the context that we had to make that statement. Mm-hmm. We saw in the federal space an absolute need for zero hallucinations. Zero. We're not allowed to hallucinate. And that was my instruction to our AI team. It came back and it says, you're gonna ask a question about what the evaluation criteria are in an opportunity. Zero risk. We can have zero margin for error here. I need to know the exact evaluation criteria. You tell me what they are, you quote the information, you get the source for it, you give me the page number and the exact document. And then somebody can immediately check to make sure that that's correct, and we enable other AIs to quickly check. But we have found that was a key selling point. That, it's one thing just to, you see that in a lot of apparently legal briefs where people are just making up cases. Mm-hmm. We do not make up opportunities. That does not happen.
All right, and so in the lightning round here, we have about a minute left. Just what are the top 3 things that contract managers, business capture people, business development people, and really CEOs of contractors, what do they need to change to do better in the next year, do you think, given the AI advent that we're all undergoing?
First of all, they need to stop thinking of contracts as a legal archive and think of it as a key part of them doing business. This system is important there. And then in that system, that data, it's important to drive their business. So every obligation, milestone, modification, IP provision, that's an opportunity to understand how to grow your business. So the people in that system are your partners. They're just not a cost. So mentally think of it through that way. The folks who are going to get the most out of these systems, treat these systems as a key component from opportunity identification already through contract closeout, one big sweep. And then make sure that when they're using AI, they're using it with a real understanding of how their business runs. I think it's absolutely critical. There's no force multiplier if you're using bad data. It simply doesn't work. You need to have real domain knowledge. There's no point in having the fastest AI with the latest model if it gives you the wrong answer because you asked the wrong question. That technology really matters, and how you've implemented that really matters.
Kevin Brancato is Senior Vice President of Product Strategy at TechnoMile. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
It's been a pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much.
And that's it for this edition of Federal Front Lines. Watch for more episodes as the summer arrives and we get into the heavy federal budget season. Until then, I'm Tom Temin.